Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would also like to acknowledge country, and I'd like to acknowledge the Gumbaynggirr people for having me on country. Being an Aboriginal man myself, I'm from a Wabikal country, from Maitland, down the Maitland area. We are all very lucky to have the oldest living culture in the world, in excess of 65,000 years. Aboriginal people manage country in a way that we, recycle, we manage country for what it is, where our waste was disposed of back into country in that circular economy space. And now we're in a new space in 2025 where we're managing different types of waste. I'm very passionate about country. We get what we give to Mother Earth, and I respect her first and foremost. So I'd like to acknowledge country. I'd like to pay my respects to any elders past, present and future. So moving on, I am currently the acting unit head for the Aboriginal Community Waste Management team, and we recently did an evaluation of the Aboriginal waste management programs. I'll move that slide. The EPA, so we run two programs. We commissioned, hang on a second. We commissioned an Aboriginal consultant to conduct an in-depth evaluation of two key initiatives. So the first program was the Aboriginal Land Cleanup and Prevention Program, and the second program was the Aboriginal Community Waste Management Program. So the Aboriginal Cleanup Program was available, or applicants was available to all land councils, where the ACWMP program was available for application by discrete Aboriginal communities, which are former missions or reserves, and there's 61 of those across the state of New South Wales. The review of the waste program. So the review highlighted the successes and areas for improvement, with a focus on flexibility, collaboration, and a community support to drive community-led solutions. I'm pulling it down here. So the EPA, the review of the OutCup and ACWMP, the objectives of the OutCup program were to clean up and prevent illegal dumping, build partnerships with communities, implement deterrence and education, and embedded cultural land care practices. The ACWMP objectives were to reduce waste and litter, co-design waste management plans, deliver cleanups, infrastructure and employment. The program impact, so since the inception of the programs, I think it was 2007, there's been over $5 million invested within the programs, and the objectives within both of the programs were to strengthen Aboriginal community pride, in taking ownership of waste management areas within their communities, inspire local initiatives such as designing custom signage for bins and looking at ways that communication and using different communication methods to try and get our younger generations involved with waste management. Education and training events, so that holding events across communities, and looking at security for problem waste areas. So looking at areas that have had waste dumped. So a lot of times that people from outside the Aboriginal communities know that the waste, the crown or land that's been under native title, the waste gets dumped there because they assume that the Aboriginal communities can afford to go and clean it up, and it's this evolution of issues that are created for our community. So reuse centres that also act as community hubs. So some of the funding out Brungle Tumut, out the DAC out Tumut Way, was invested in building a facility where the community can actually go and put stuff and resell it or recycle it, give it back out to the community. That would include clothing, old furniture, used recycled furniture, and then also generate revenue out of that space as well. And the obvious problem is waste removal. So removing the initial waste that's been there, for many years. What worked well, and this is across both programs, so what worked well, there's significant coverage across New South Wales. The program worked in 39 of the 61 DACs, discrete Aboriginal communities. We established really good connections with community. The capacity building via community gatherings and local events. So obviously the opening and closing of local, the completion of events, meeting with community on site throughout the programs, life cycle. The installation of deterrence methods such as gates and barriers and fencing and cameras. So it stopped waste being dumped in specific areas. But what we also found is that waste would obviously be transferred to other sites, and then we'd be playing catch up. The challenges. So the challenges for community, onerous grant administration and too prescriptive, and they were lacking flexibility. So a LAUC or a DAC has one CEO, and they've got so many various touch points from government organisations and private organisations trying to get in and have these discussions with the CEO to resolve issues. The CEOs have obviously got other priorities in relation to housing, community health and taking care of their community. And then our organisations are coming in, and communities want the funding to resolve the problems, but it's managing and administering that funding that they don't have the capacity because of the workload that they've got in that space. So regional location and skill shortage. So obviously in remote areas, we working in places that I talked with before, Munga, out at Kenya and Brewarrina and Dubbo, and really remote locations of the state. So looking at trying to build those skills within communities is very challenging. High turnover of staff, project delivery and natural disasters. So EPA has turnover of staff, and project manage and structural change. The CEOs have changed, and they change quite regularly because the role that a CEO of a land council is very hard. It's a very hard role, and the CEOs are quite under a lot of pressure, whether it be from community and managing all the other issues that they've got within their community. So making sure that those, the staffing is sort of try and managed. Natural disasters, COVID was a big deal back in the day because the grants were rolled out. Obviously changes, people weren't working in offices, and we had fires down the coast, pretty much right across New South Wales, and then we had floods, which really impacted the way that we delivered our programs. Also caused more waste problems and issues and environmental problems. Difficult to address problems of waste like asbestos. So recently we're up in Kempsey, just generally managing our waste program, uncovered asbestos, illegally dumped asbestos in one of the remote communities. I think it was at Green Hills off the top of my head, and trying and divert the funding to manage that waste. But then if there's larger amounts, it's not within the program's capacity to be able to manage that. I think that was a 10K amount of asbestos, but posed a risk to the community, health risk. Opportunities for improvement. For both programs, the evaluation found that stronger collaboration between government agencies was necessary. Like I said before, there's too many touch points for the CEO, too many government organisations going into our communities and saying, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, but we're not delivering. And that's exactly what happens. The way that improved data, so there's long-term data capture that we could use to see what waste is being out there and what waste is being collected and what's being managed across the state. Better support is required for the applicants. So what I've found since managing the program, I've only been managing the program for 9 months, is that we need to be in community. We can't be managing community from a desk. We need to be getting out and actually talking to community face to face, having a discussion, and then working together in collaboration with our community. Better support for successful applicants. So looking at how the funds are managed and strategically managed, and assisting the LAUC or the CEO to engage with contractors or engage with services outside of the capacity of their day-to-day operations. Because sometimes when the expectations are LAC that's going to engage, and I found that with one of the LACs mentioned before is that the cost will be inflated when a LAC or a DAC goes and applies and tries to get the funding. We have the power as organisations, private and government organisations, to ensure that our communities are getting value for money and not being ripped off. Changing the reporting and application process. So making sure that the reporting and application process is easier to follow than previous. The key success factors, looking forward into the new program, is looking at developing a community leadership, so engaging with the community so they're in control of their own programs, not us in control of the program. Building capacity within communities to manage their waste long term, not going in and just cleaning up waste and having a contractual arrangement where we're just going to remove the waste and that's the end of the contract, closed, finished. Let's look at the long-term objectives on how we're managing waste to ensure that we're impacting our community's health and well-being long-term and developing those relationships with councils and various other organisations. Enabling better access to training and education. So, when I personally want to go and see my LAUCs or my DACs and talk with the CEOs, looking at what education needs they need to be able to run the grant funding or run the program moving forward. And that might be financial training, it might be report writing, it might be MS, like stuff on the programs, on basic computer skills to be able to assist our communities to manage these programs. Strengthening relationships with community members, so again, making sure that we're bringing that community together, and developing and strengthening relationships with stakeholders. Making sure that we're going in, and I had this discussion with the Tom Cleanaway group, is making sure that we're going in with a solution, and we're not going to go in there and promise a solution and then walk away and not deliver it, because that's the worst outcome for a community. We want to go in with a solution and deliver that solution for the better long term and the betterment of our communities. Program redesign, the EPA on country. So we've been investigating working with other agencies, so broader agencies right across the state. It'll be less onerous on the community. Looking at better stakeholder engagement, which I touched on before. Developing the long-term strategies, so developing those partners. Some of the DACs aren't serviced by councils for various reasons. Some of the relationships between various stakeholders and land councils and DACs aren't, that they're a bit rocky. But, I found that going in there, I think within the new program, that we can bring those relationships together and go there as a singular group or group and deliver these programs. Develop long-term solutions to manage waste in a community, looking at the CDS in remote communities and looking at waste servicing, like places like Wilmaringal, which is 105 k's out of town, 205k return for somebody to go and take their waste to a transfer station. Realistically, I would like to know how many people in this room are going to travel 200 kilometres to go to a transfer station to take their waste, and it's not cost effective for lower socioeconomic communities and my communities. Consistent delivery across the state. So we're looking at a consistent approach across the state with the same delivery mechanism, so each community is getting the same outcomes based on what they need, based on what the CEOs need, or based on what that entire community needs. Ensuring that the funding and the accountability of the reporting, not only just on the DAC, but with our local communities, with the communities and with our organisation itself, that we're getting value for money and we're delivering the outcomes that not only that the EPA needs, the organisation needs, but the value for money that the community need, that they're getting money put where they need it as well within their communities. So just a few photos. So the one up to your left, that's Perfleet Taree. So Perfleet Taree was a trial program that I worked with Roads to Home. So Roads to Home currently work across all the discrete Aboriginal communities. They're working within over 30 communities, 33 communities, I think, at the moment. Ash Dean, one of the project officers up there, reached out and said, Nath, can we look at a program? So we trialled Ash, or the Roads to Home program, being in the DAC and having the relationships with the CEO to deliver the waste removal and management of that program. It was a success, took the pressure off the Lauk CEO. The program was delivered, was cost effective, and they got the outcomes they needed. Down the bottom, Lapa, up the top with me and the Awabakal CEO, and Miriam, and down the bottom with me and one of my team members, Roxy. Some of the programs were delivered across the state. We do get out. The other one down to the right-hand side is Brungle Tumut, and the one up above on the right-hand side is, I believe it's Wahallo. But we do some really good program. We run some really good programs, and I'm looking forward to the new program rolling out within, hopefully, in the next month or so. It's still up for approval, so I can't really discuss that at this point in time, but it's looking really good, and it's shaping up to be a really good opportunity for our communities to manage waste long term and look at those sustainable long term outcomes. Thank you.